Hello everybody and welcome back. Today is the vlog that we have all been waiting for, and that is the publisher battle. I told you guys about this, I think in my goals video back in January, and it has taken me so long to get to this point, but I'm so excited that it's finally here and we're finally doing it. It took me this long because of the way that I was setting things up. We're not going to just be picking a book from one publisher, picking a book from another, and seeing which one I like better. That would be too easy. Instead, we're going to be using a book bracket, and each publisher has been placed in their spot depending on how many books I have read from them this year alone. So I want to find out kind of what is my favorite publisher. Does the publisher that I read the most books from, or the ones that I give the highest rating, do they always give me books that I'm gonna love? So I will put up the bracket here so that you guys can see kind of what it is looking like. In first place, we're gonna kind of go just like March Madness basketball style. The first place, the first seed, the one that I've read from the most is going to be at the top and have the easiest spot, battling against the publisher that I've read from the least, and then go down to number 2 and then kind of flip it back and forth like that. You should be able to see the numbers up there, but I'm super excited about this. I think it's going to be a ton of fun and just a cool way to see if my favorite publisher, the publisher that I've read from the most this year, can make it through to the end. So I did decide to use imprints rather than the big 5 because obviously there would only be 5 and I wouldn't be able to make a bracket out of that. Indie publishers I didn't have enough of to put in with the big 5, and self-published just has way too much variation, I think, to make it part of this experiment, if that makes sense. So for these videos, I'm hoping to do 6 episodes. We're going to be doing 2 books from each publisher, and each episode will include one battle of the bracket until we get down to the final 2 in December. I'm really hoping to do one a month. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a lot of books, but I'm really excited about this video, and so I hope that that will continue to move me forward and motivate me to keep up with everything. So as you can see, Tor is the number 1 seed. They are the ones that I have read from the most. Tor does have different imprints. They've got Tor Nightfire, Tor.com, and regular Tor. I'm not going to be including those imprints. We're just going to do the one umbrella of Tor in this video because they're really the only ones that had that. And then at the end, if they do win, we may do a mini publisher battle sometime in early next year to see which one of those 3 mini imprints I liked the best, but we'll kind of wait and see how that shakes out. For all I know, Tor could get knocked out in the first round. They're also going to be going up against Ballantine books. I've really only read 1 book from Ballantine this year, and I'll be honest, this last seed was very hard to place because I've read 1 book from a lot of different publishers. I think that covers all of the, like, how is this going to work? What are we going to do? So really quickly, let me tell you which books I think I'm going to be reading, and we'll jump into the first book. I think I'm going to switch back and forth, so I'll do 1 Tor, 1 Ballantine, 1 Tor, and 1 Ballantine. I'm going to do this on a 10-point scale using Cassidy's rating system, and the average at the end will be the one that wins and moves on to the next bracket. Okay, so I actually only own the 2 Tor, the 2 Ballantine. One I have on audiobook, and the other one I am going to get from the library because it just recently came out and I haven't picked it up yet. So the first one from Tor is one that I've been really wanting to read for a very long time. It's been on my shelf since Rachel gifted it to me and started the whole Empires Comparing Eggplants While the World Ends tagline, and I'm super excited to finally be getting to Spine of the Dragon, Kevin J. Anderson. This, I don't know anything about other than the tagline that I just told you. I'm so excited to read it. I think all 3 in the trilogy are out now, and this one is published by just regular old Tor, and I can't wait. I'm so excited to read this, finally. I will mention that I'm going to attempt to not do sequels in this vlog. It may be a little tricky. Every once in a while I may end up having to do an author I've read from before or a sequel, but I'm going to try not to because I feel like sequels aren't really fair, especially if I already know that I like the book. The next one is one that is coming out this month in June of 2023, and that is The Archive Undying by Emma Miko Candon? Emma Miko Candon, I think I'm saying that right. This is a sci-fi, so I really do want to include all different genres in these vlogs. Not going to be really picky about only including certain things because all of these publishers publish different things. It sounds really, really good. I have the audiobook for this one as well, and I really need to get to it because obviously the publisher sent me a copy and I have been dying to read it since I got it. Okay, and then the first book for Ballantine books is one that I was actually shocked that Ballantine was publishing because they don't usually do a lot of fantasy. They'll do like occasional sci-fi, but not a lot of fantasy, and that is The Perilous Times by Thomas D. Lee. This is one that I have really been interested in, but I'm a little bit nervous about for one very specific reason. So this one does talk about climate change, and that can be done in a really cool way, or that can be done in a very heavy-handed way. I don't mind it when books bring in real-world applications into their stories, but I just don't want it to be completely in your face, something that is just hammered at and hammered at and hammered at, because it really takes me out of the fantasy world story. If I wanted something like that, I would choose to read like a literary fiction or something of that nature that's more set in our world. But I am hopeful for it. I'm still very interested in it, and I'm very hopeful because I do love a good Arthurian legend, so I'm very, very hopeful for this one. And then the next one that I think I'm going to do is The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. I was really torn between doing The Ferryman and doing The Passage, but The Ferryman did just come out and it sounds really interesting. I'm hopeful that I end up liking it. I also have an arc of it, so I need to get to it. So I think I'm gonna go with that one. And this one is a standalone, whereas The Passage is a series, so it is nice to just be able to read a standalone for this vlog. That one is not a small book, honestly. None of these are super tiny, but I'm excited to get this vlog on the road. I think I've been talking for what says 10.5 minutes. I'm gonna shut up now and hope that future Mel can edit this down a little bit so that you guys don't listen to me ramble for 900 years. I was sitting on my phone and could not find it. I wanted to find my phone because I am into The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, and I wanted to tell you guys how far I am, and it looks like I am 32% into The Ferryman so far. We're following Proctor in this, and he lives on this island that is very secluded, and it's a world where the main people that live and thrive on the island are regenerated essentially, so they'll go by ferry to the land of the dead or dying, and they'll get re-brought back as a 16-year-old that kind of has basic knowledge, and they'll be brought back onto the island and given parents, and they'll become a ward of 2 of the thriving members of the society, and then the cycle starts all over again. I don't really know a whole lot else about it other than that. I will be honest, this book is boring as hell. We have a lot of exposition. It was shelved in the horror section, but I really have not figured out at all how this could possibly be horror. Definitely a dystopian feel to it. I can definitely see that with the island and things. And there are moments where I'm super intrigued. The very end of the prologue was cool, but 90% of what I have read so far has just been him walking around talking to people, talking about his life and his feelings. And I'm just like, move on. Move on. I had been told that this was a problem with The Passage that people had noticed, that he just did a lot of talking, a lot of backstory that you didn't think was relevant at the time but could be relevant later, and I feel like that's what's happening right now in The Ferryman. I don't need to know about every minute detail of his life, what he ate for dinner, and why he's sad. That's just not what I'm here for. I want to know more about the corruption of the island and why they're there and what else could be going on, what's happening behind the scenes, because we'll get snippets of people watching them through drones and things like that, and that part is really, really cool. I'm super intrigued by that, but I could not give a crap about what Proctor ate for dinner. So I'm hoping that the payoff is worth all the minutia, but we'll see. I'm 32% and I don't want to DNF it, so that's definitely a perk. It's fine. It's extremely well written. The prose is dry, but I did adjust to it and it did get better. We do have 2 points of view, Proctor and a female, and I definitely prefer the female's point of view. The writing is not nearly as dry. The plot is a lot more engaging. That's where most of the plot is happening, but it looks like about 80% of this book is from Proctor's point of view. So I'm hoping the payoff is worth it. It's fine, but I really need it to speed up and for something to happen, because this book is really long, and that's a lot more of what we ate for dinner to get through. So this clip may be completely unusable because I'm outside walking at work and it's quite windy, which is good because it's 90 degrees outside. But if it's usable, I wanted to tell you guys that I have now reached part 3 of The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, and I'm liking it a lot more now. That happened about 40-ish%, and I thought that the world got a lot more interesting. All the perspectives started to get much more intriguing, and I'm quite liking it. I'm still not loving it, but I am liking it much better now that we're out of that slice of life type thing. So we'll see. Hopefully I continue to still like it. So I'm gonna go back to listening. I finished The Ferryman, so we need to talk about this one. I feel like it did go up pretty significantly from the last time that I talked to you guys. I do want to pull up my spreadsheet so that we can go over exactly what I gave it, since we're going to be averaging these scores. But I ended up liking this one. I won't say that I loved it because the beginning was extremely slow. There was a lot of exposition in the beginning. And I do think, wow, that is a really large spider. Anyway, I do think that the book did kind of lose logic for me in a couple of places. We did get a decent amount of explanation toward the end about why they were on this island, how they got there, all of that fun stuff. I think that the focus was in a bit of a weird place for me personally. I can't really say much more than that because of how it ended and that being part of the twist, but it felt like we were trying to do a lot and make a lot of different connections, and I'm not really sure that all of those connections needed to be made necessarily, but I did like the second half a lot more than the first. I felt like it picked up a lot more. I liked the twist. I felt like it was interesting and fun. I won't say that it was overly unique. It did remind me a lot of a book that I read not too long ago that's relatively popular, but I did like it, and I thought that it was a lot of fun. So I think that this one's gonna get a high 3-star from me, maybe a low 4-star, but I think on the spreadsheet it's gonna technically come out to a high 3-star. So for this one, this gets a 7.75, and it is the first book for Ballantine. So Ballantine is currently sitting at a 7.75, and that is the score to beat. So on to the next book.
I don't wanna stay here, no. Ain't gonna keep it low now. If you wanna go, let's go. Let's wrap it up and hit the road. I just got an awesome vibe, striking the winner post now. Liberty's on my mind. We've taken off, we've left the ground. You gotta understand that we get one chance, one chance. You will never regret the things that we'll do. 'Cause I wanna try.
Okay, so I have initial impressions of The Archive Undying, and this is one of the Tor books. It's Tor.com, I believe, and I got an ARC of this sent by the publisher for honest review, so I did want to really get to this one. It sounds really cool. It's about war machine AI gods, and they are like in charge of a city, and when the AI dies, its city dies with it. And there is a corpse that's left behind, but that corpse can sometimes run off and only devotion can bring it back. I have to read the tagline for this one because I will be honest with you, I am 120 pages in and I have no freaking clue what's going on. This is one of those books that I started and went, huh? And stopped and went and looked at Goodreads to see if everyone else was as utterly confused as I was or if there was just something wrong with me. Full disclosure, I did start this as an audiobook because I had the audiobook for review as well. I have since stopped the audiobook and started doing it physically, and I do like it a lot better physically, but most of the reviews were like either I had no idea what was going on for 80% of this book, just strap in, enjoy the ride, the writing's pretty and the characters are cool, or they DNF'd it and didn't continue. I don't think this is going to be like a 1-star book. If I finish it, I do think that I will enjoy it enough, but I am struggling with the fact that it's nothing like what the synopsis led me to believe that it was. It's very confusing, very convoluted. I think that the idea is cool, but we're just jumping from idea to idea, and I'm really having a hard time with that. The main character that we're focusing, Sunyai, is odd, and I can see where people might like this type of character, but there's a reason for them being odd, but they're very odd. And there was a lot in the beginning that was just like weird sexual innuendos and stuff, which just it drew me out of the story almost instantly, and I've had a really hard time reconnecting to it since then. Like I said, moving on to the physical did help quite a lot. Things started to make a little bit more sense, but this writing style is very easily in one ear, in one eye, out the other kind of writing style where I'm just not retaining anything, even though I'm like sitting down focused on it, not got any distractions. it's just difficult. So I'm gonna keep reading it. I am definitely gonna finish it. I wanna try not to DNF for this vlog because I think the only way I'm gonna be able to do it if I have a DNF is to give that book a 0. And obviously if that book gets a 0 and the next book gets 5 stars, the average is a 5. So it's gonna be hard for that publisher to win at all. So I'm gonna try not to DNF anything for this series, but yeah. It's not terrible, but it needs to make sense. I'm not here for quirky characters and pretty writing. That's not what I read for. So I think I'm gonna struggle with this one a little bit, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping the payoff is like amazing and I love it. We'll see. Okay, so I am about 165 pages into The Archive Undying. I still have absolutely no idea how to explain this book to you, but I am slowly starting to understand kind of what's going on. I think that we are looking for this AI god that died and left his body behind, and now they're wanting to turn it into a war machine, but they don't have all the stuff that they think they need to turn into a war machine. Maybe, possibly. Anyway, that's all I had to say, is that I'm glad that I'm finally following the plot, even if it's for only like 50 pages. Well, hopefully we can use this clip because I've got dinner going and it's quite loud with the fan on in the kitchen, but I tried to come in here so that hopefully you guys would not really be able to hear it. Hopefully this clip's useful. But anyway, I wanted to let you know that I have now finished The Archive Undying by Emma Miko Kendon, and I didn't love it. This book lost me pretty early on and I just never reconnected with it. It completely just never got my attention again. Never really connected with the characters, never really connected with the plot. It is a very convoluted story with a lot of jumping around, a lot of characters. We're switching POVs pretty often, name changes, things like that, that made it a little bit harder to follow at times, especially in the beginning. I think that maybe I had just hyped this book up a little bit too much for myself because I was hoping that it would be this like epic AI god destructor kind of story, and that's what the synopsis led me to believe that it was going to be, but that's very much so not what this is. I mean, there's elements of that to it, but I think that the world is really cool. I think that the ideas were really cool, but I just didn't like the way it was executed by this author. So unfortunately, this one's going to get a 2-star. I think it's a 4 out of 10, but once I have it like run through my rating system, I will leave that down here for you guys so you know what the score for Tor is at this point. And now we're going to move on to the final book for Ballantine, which is going to be Perilous Times. I'm a little bit worried about this one. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I'm hopeful for it. I think I'm going to be listening to it because I was able to get a review copy from Penguin Random House Audio. Once I get started on that and I have a little bit more thoughts, I will let you know what I'm thinking. Hello. So it has actually been quite a while since I have talked to you guys. I didn't mean for it to be this long. It's just, oops. I did start the Perilous Times by Thomas D. Lee. I was listening to it on audio, and yeah, I guess first let me just tell you what this book is about. So this is following Sir Kay initially, who comes out of the ground, comes out of his grave, his sleep, and he is reawoken every time the world is in peril and needs a knight to help save it. He is one of the like Knights of the Round Table that was with Arthur and Merlin. When he awakes, there is this explosion going on and he ends up escaping with Miriam, who is a woman that has spent her life battling against her country. We're also following, I believe at some point, Merlin as well as his old enemy Lancelot, all set in present day when these knights have been reawoken because the world is in peril. And the like overarching conflict in this is that England is undergoing global warming. We are kind of set in a future timeline where global warming is a really big problem. It's not just something that we kind of talk about. It is something that is very real and very prevalent in that time setting and in that world, and how everyone is kind of fighting against that. And it's going to use these knights, these chivalrous men to kind of show the differences and I guess help put a spin on this particular topic. If you know me, you know that I am not really someone that loves an in-your-face story about particular world political stuff. Like, I don't mind it being sprinkled into my books. I think that some of those discussions are very relevant to a lot of fantasy stories, and I think that that part of politics is really, really cool. But I don't love it when it's shoved down your throat, and I don't love it when you can clearly see the author's viewpoint and which side they're on. I do like a little bit more of a nuanced discussion about things and seeing different sides and kind of coming to your own conclusions, and maybe even showing what is right and what is wrong with certain situations and really kind of weaving that in a nuanced way. And unfortunately, I don't think that this book is going to do that. I did get about 25% into this, and I did like the writing. I do like the idea. I think that the idea is cool, and I do like the Knights of the Round Table. Arthur is something that I have always had an interest in. I actually took a class, an Arthurian romance class in college, and quite enjoyed like Yvain and things like that. But this is just too modernized, I think, for me. I would much rather have, I think, a more direct retelling, or I don't even know if it can be considered a retelling because Arthur in and of itself is a legend, but this one was just not working for me in a lot of ways. I found myself very interested initially in the setup and how we were learning about things, but not so interested in the conclusion, or not so interested like once we got kind of moving past that initial setup. It just wasn't really working for me. I'm gonna DNF this one, unfortunately. I don't think that I can see myself giving it more than a 1 or 2 star just because it's not gonna be my type of book, despite the fact that I was very hopeful that it would give me those nuanced discussions and it would give me something new to the Knights of the Round Table. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be too on the nose, for lack of a better way to put it. So it's gonna get a 0. So all DNFs for the publisher battles are going to get 0s. I think that that's just the most fair way to do it. I don't wanna rate a book off of what I've read because it could be 25%, it could be 50%, it could be 10%. There's no really way of knowing at what point I will decide a book is not working for me. I also don't wanna force myself to finish books. Initially, I said I wasn't gonna DNF for this vlog, but all that's going to succeed in doing is making me hate a book, and this vlog's going to take forever to get to you because I don't want to read. And that's essentially what has happened with this, and why it's taking me so long to get this to you guys is because I didn't want to read. Like, nothing was picking up my interest. I was just looking at the things that I was like, you have to read that. And I just didn't want to. So I am going to be making a few changes when we're talking about the publisher battle in the future, and I will talk to you guys about that when we conclude this vlog. But yeah, it's gonna get a 0. I guess let's flip over to the next book and we'll see kind of where we're at as far as the standings go. It is humid outside. I just went and walked Ollie and we waited until like 8 o'clock because it's been so stinking hot outside. But he enjoyed himself. It's just my hair we don't want to talk about. We'll just ignore that. I just wanted to let you guys know that I have just barely started Spine of the Dragon by Kevin J. Anderson. This is the next Tor pick, and I'm not loving the writing style so far. The prose is it almost feels like he wrote the first draft and was gonna go back later and make everything flow a little bit better. Forgot to go back and finish the second draft is kind of how I feel right now. I don't know, things just seem very simplistic to me, and I don't mind a simplistic writing style. I'm not really sure what about it is that I don't love, but I'm hoping that, you know, I start to kind of acclimate to that and get used to it and it won't bother me anymore. Probably like 150 pages in, I won't even notice it anymore. I am noticing that we are getting a lot of tell not show. There's a lot of people that are just popping up and we're told that they were gone for millennia. Now here they are, and you're like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm missing something, like some sort of hint or some kind of build up, something. So I am struggling a little bit with that, but my memory card is flashing at me that it has no memory left, so hopefully this clip is usable. Anyway, I will talk to you guys once I'm a little further in. Pardon my slightly messy house because it's been a long ass week, you guys. I need coffee on top of coffee on top of coffee. I don't know if I've already told you. If I didn't tell you, I have no idea what I told anything. But Monday night, or I guess Monday morning, we had like a massive hailstorm and I lost all of my power. Well, all of my power. I lost power and we had trees ripped out of the ground and I didn't have power for like 18 hours. I have been eating out because a lot of the meat in my fridge spoiled, and it's been a time, okay? And then work is crazy. You guys have heard me complain about work enough. I'm not going to continue to complain about work. However, I am finding myself really, really struggling with some of the reads for this vlog, and I really hate to DNF a second book. but I think I'm gonna have to DNF Spine of the Dragon by Kevin J. Anderson. I want to love this book so much, or I at least want to like it and continue on in the series, because I actually own books 1 and 2. Rachel really liked this book. She actually bought this for me, and I definitely see her comparison to her like little tagline for sure, but I unfortunately just am struggling with it, and let me tell you why. First is the writing style. I've really not gotten over the writing style. It has gotten a little bit better the longer we've gone, and honestly, I jacked this audiobook up to like a 3.25 speed. I don't notice it as much on 3.25 speed, but I still feel like the writing is just, it feels very first draft. It feels very, not young in writing, but like juvenile in tone. I don't really know how to describe it. We are over explaining things that don't need any explanation, and then we aren't explaining a lot of the world building things that do need explanation. So I'm finding that the writing is just too much in dialogue and stuff like that, but then when we flip into a lot of the cool world building, because honestly there are a lot of cool ideas in this book. It's not that the ideas and the concept is bad, it's just we're not really given a lot of depth into anything. These, was it Reths? Pop up out of nowhere and you don't really know where they came from or where they've been. We had a guy stuck in some kind of like cave thing and you're like, how in the world? Like why? How did he get there? There were a lot of things that just did not make sense to me, and I wasn't really invested enough in the plot, in the characters to overlook that kind of stuff. There is plot in this book. So basically these Reths, I think is what they were called, were created by a dragon, and then they created the humans to be their slaves, but then they disappeared for thousands of years. Human flourished, blossomed, and now these Reths are back and one of them is trying to raise the dragon to destroy the world. You don't really know why raising the dragon destroys the world, but it's gonna happen, apparently. And I need more. But there are a lot of cool ideas. There are a lot of ideas, which may be part of the problem. There are a lot of characters, which is cool, and I think it does sometimes help expand a world, but when you're following too many points of views and trying to give them equal time, suddenly none of the characters get enough time, and therefore I just never connected to anybody enough that the things that were bothering me I could look past because there were other things to keep me engaged. I did get about this far in. I still have like 3 hours on super speed of the audiobook, and I don't foresee myself changing my opinion on this book. It would probably end up getting a 2-star because, like I said, the concepts are cool and it's not inherently a bad book. I can see why people would enjoy this book, but for me it is light years too long, and I struggled a lot with the writing style here. So sad day, honestly. Will I potentially go back and finish it one day? Maybe, because I own the second book and I want to like it, but I'm just not. So, as we previously said, that means that Spine of the Dragon is getting a 0, and I think that honestly DNFing that one, I could power through it and potentially give it a 2-star, but it is the most fair for the vlog for me to DNF that one and give 2 books on either side of the publishers a 0. So, I guess let's just flip over to a future me that has already done all of the calculations and everything, and we'll figure out who is going to be moving on to the second round of the publisher battle. Alright guys, so it is time to conclude the publisher battle. I really like this concept and I think it's going to be a lot of fun as we continue to go on, but I just want to mention really quickly that I will be making a couple of changes moving forward. I think that I will be a little bit pickier about which books that I'm choosing, and I have really tried to deep dive a little bit better into the publishers and their backlist to find things that I am really interested in before picking them up for the vlog. I will say that unfortunately, I was pretty interested in all of the books in this vlog, and I know that we didn't have some huge wins, but everything here was something that was on my list, something that was on my radar that I wanted to read. So even though they didn't exactly work out, I think that's okay because I got books that I really wanted to read off my TBR. Now I know. Do I think that these were the perfect representation of the publishers? I guess so. Tor does a lot of fantasy. They also do a lot of horror, so in hindsight, I might have added a horror into this vlog. Ballantine is a publisher that while I have read a couple of from this year, I realized that I just don't know their types of books super well and what they lean toward. So that's something that I do definitely want to explore in the future. So with all of that being said, let's find out who won. When we are looking at the scoring, obviously there was a 0 and a DNF for Tor and a 0 and a DNF for Ballantine. So they're on pretty even playing field as far as that goes. So it's really gonna be up to the 2 beginner books to decide who the winner is. I am still going to do these as averages because in the future, if I decided to DNF a book, and I didn't DNF one for the other publisher, we would still need the average because say something got a perfect 10, it still has the chance to win if I gave the other publisher 2 stars or something like that. So looking at the scores, the Ferryman, which is Ballantine, got a 7.75. And when we average that with the 0, it comes out to a 3.875 for Ballantine. And then when we look at the Archive Undying, which was Tor, along with the 0 from the Spine of the Dragon, we got a 2.165. So that does mean that Ballantine is moving forward to the next round of the publisher battle. I don't know who they're going to be battling against yet, but I'm excited to find out. The next installment is going to be really fun because it's going to be between Berkeley and Voyager. Berkeley does a lot of mystery as well as a lot of romance, and so I'm very interested to see what I'm going to end up getting for that one. And Voyager tends to do a lot of fantasy, and they've actually got some fantasy romance in there too, so I'm very excited to get to both Voyager and Berkeley. I think that that's going to be a really fun head-to-head, and I've actually already looked ahead at some of the books that I'm considering reading for that vlog, and I'm super excited about most of them. One of them is been on my TBR and like my I really want to read you, but I haven't had an excuse to list for such a long time, and I'm so excited to try it. It is a booktube darling, one that I feel like especially the mystery thriller booktubers really love. Let me know in the comments if you think you can guess what it is. Probably not, but just like give it your best guess. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun filming it. Even though we didn't have huge wins, like it was still such a fun experiment to do, and I cannot wait to see how future installments pan out. I think it's going to surprise me because I never would have thought that Tor wouldn't have won this particular section, but it didn't, and so I get to read more Ballantine, which I'm pretty excited about actually. So if you're just here hanging out and you want to let me know that you were here, leave me either like a boxing glove emoji or something to do with battling, swords, whatever you want to pick. Get creative and let me know down in the comments. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are in the description box down below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.